The turrets and parapets of the castle resembled jagged teeth rising from the shadowed form of the structure. The stone, black and frosted with rime, seems to drink in the light around it. The windows of the castle shine with no light, save for one in the tallest tower. Hello everybody, Jordan here. The PH is silent. Castles. Creepy castles. Creepy castles in Ravenloft. A singular castle exists in Forlorn, the smallest domain of dread in Ravenloft. Previously, I spoke about the largest domain of dread, which is the Sea of Sorrows. And something I forgot to explore in that video is the depths of that sea. I can only imagine some terrible creature lurking at the bottom of it. Forlorn is older even than the Sea of Sorrows. Nestled between Barovia, Caratakis, and Hazlan, it is, in fact, the second domain of dread to be created by the Dark Powers, with Barovia being the first. An odd place, well, odd for Ravenloft, in that there are little to no animals that inhabit this forested mountainous area. There are no villagers, no towns or cities, just an uneasy stillness and the howl of an occasional zombie wolf. On top of the red granite cliffs that surround the Lake of Red Tears stands a decaying structure, Castle Tristan, a play in 3 acts, so to speak. So to set the stage, we'll talk about the 3 important events that led to the creation of Forlorn's Dark Lord and what brought that whole area to Ravenloft. Act 1. Somewhere on a forgotten world in the Prime Material Plane, a land known as Forfar was ruled by some nobles who had a very beautiful daughter. The daughter, Lady Flora ap Blanc, married Rivelin ap Tosh, and the people toasted to their wedding. Soon Flora was with child, and Rivelin rode off to join a war effort against another clan to the east. Although they were successful, poor Rivelin was struck with an arrow and fell in battle. He was not found, and the soldiers returned to Forfar without him. Lady Flora did not give up hope that her husband would return to her. Now Rivelin's body lay in the mud, himself on the brink of death, and as dusk descended, the dark creatures that fed upon the dead came out. Rivelin was not yet dead, as a vampire found him and drained away his life. He awoke 2 days later, thirsting for blood. Cursed with vampirism, his love for Flora was still there, but he knew the monster he had become. He initially hid from the world and fed on creatures in the woods, and after a time, he could not stay away from Flora anymore. His thirst for human blood was too much. He returned to the castle and to Flora, who was excited to see him, and the two kept his condition hidden from the people. Flora, still pregnant, allowed Rivelin to feed on her. The vampiric toxins didn't damage Flora, but it did change her baby, who was accumulating parts of the vampire curse. Now, sadly, Rivelin was overcome by his thirst for blood and eventually started killing the locals in the kingdom. Being such a new vampire, he was found and killed by an organized hunt. Now, Flora pleaded to her parents to spare her husband, and they were shocked that she had such a devotion to a monster. Now, once Rivelin was dead, the people of the kingdom put 2 and 2 together. Murmurs of a tainted Flora and an evil child growing within her circulated around the village. Flora's baby was born, and she named him Tristan the Fair. A mob of locals stormed the castle to murder Flora and her child, but they were noisy, and Flora escaped with baby Tristan running to the Druid's Grove nearby. There she found a druid named Rual and begged her to take care of the baby. Rual took Tristan and ran. Flora stayed and begged the mob not to harm her child, and they murdered her. She was hung from the branch of a sacred oak tree within the Druid Grove. The next morning, the Druids took her down and buried her with prayers, trying to correct the imbalance of good and evil that had occurred. Now, this sacred tree was forever scarred and tied to the Dark Powers. Act 2. Tristan grew up with the Druids and became a very handsome, charming, and intelligent young man. He was taught many things except druidic magic. Rual was cautious of his vampire heritage and didn't want him to become too powerful. It was Rual's hope to return the child to his grandparents, the Baron and Baroness of Forfar, but until it was time, he would be kept a secret as a nameless boy. He showed no signs of the curse until he he was in his mid-teens. And one night, Rule found Tristan drinking the blood of a young doe he had killed. He was finally changing into a vampire. Tristan knew he was spotted and hoped Rule wouldn't say anything to the druids about his night feedings, but she did. She whispered to the other druids her worst fears and what steps they must take. As the sun set that evening, Tristan attacked Rule while she was meditating in a sacred grove over a blessed antler. She was actually directly below the very tree where Tristan's mother Flora was murdered. As Tristan sprang, Rule turned with the antler and stabbed him in the chest. Tristan was not yet fully a vampire and his heart was still beating. The antler pierced his body, but not his heart. Still, he was gushing a lot of blood. Tristan's teeth grew and he sank his fangs into Rule, drinking her blood to counter the blood he was losing. Now, part of the druidic cleansing before meditation was to drink holy water and purify yourself. Tristan didn't notice at first, but Rule's blood was purified blood, and it was now coursing through his system, burning away his vampire curse. Which, if this is a thing, we need to start blessing the 70% of water in the human body and go fight more vampires. I mean, bless a lake or the whole ocean. Tristan, in pain, ripped open Rule's body, killing her, but in her last breath, she cursed him. Let murder burn in your veins with every setting of the sun, and may peace never come to you. Act 3. Tristan lay there dying as the sun sank below the horizon. Screaming, throwing himself against the earth, he was in considerable pain, and then he died. A few moments later, Tristan stood up and saw his body on the ground. He had become a ghost. Trying to escape the grove, he fled but was unable to leave, bound by Rule's curse, perhaps. When morning came, Tristan assumed he would be banished away with the sun, but instead, he awoke in his very much alive body. In this form, he also was prevented from leaving the grove. Tristan's curse was to live during the day, trapped in this grove, only to painfully die each night. Soon, the druids left this area, and it became a place of shadow and evil. Now, attempting to free himself, Tristan set fire to the entire forest, being tied to the land, or rather, the tree his mother was murdered at. This ended up hurting himself more than anything. A new approach was needed. Tristan corrupted and controlled some wolves within the area. He collected all the gold and valuables from the people his wolves killed, and after many hundreds of years, he amassed a fortune and appeared directly to travelers. Claiming to be a distant cousin of the Blancs, he was here to take up his birthright. He recruited some people from the village and started building a castle. Since he couldn't leave the grove, he'd make it a fortress where he could stay. Tristan married. His wife, Iseult, did not appear happy about it, but the locals were so enamored with Tristan they didn't consider Iseult's feelings. Iseult gave birth to 2 boys and a girl. She wanted the children to follow her faith in the goddess Diancet, but Tristan refused. The firstborn son, Gillen, lived to age 12. Tristan sent wolves to attack the boy's dog, and Gillen died protecting his pet. Morholt, the second son, was 18 when he was killed by Tristan in his sleep. Tristan went to kill his son's friend when the 2 boys were staying together, but attacked the wrong bed. His daughter, Brangane, did not die, but was captured by Tristan and imprisoned below the castle. She was locked away for an entire year until she disappeared. Tristan doesn't even know where she went, and with her strong faith in Diancet, perhaps the gods saved her. Iseult committed suicide by jumping from a tower, supposedly. Now, over the course of years, Tristan started attacking the servants, and slowly the castle became abandoned. Many, many years later, Tristan appeared publicly again, appearing as the great-grandson of the previous owner. He built up some followers and started a civil war with the rulers of the land known as the Apfiddle family. Tristan killed the Apfiddle family and declared himself absolute lord of his domain, the base of which is his home, Castle Blanc. Now, the Dark Powers instantly granted this request, and Forfar was physically removed from the prime material plane and placed next to Barovia in Ravenloft. The first Barovians to visit gave it the name Forlorn, and Tristan was renamed Tristan the Dark. Now, the people who came with him, those loyal to Tristan, were changed into goblins, spelt with a Y. These are violent creatures that are unique to Ravenloft and Forlorn. Tristan commands the goblins and zombie wolves that roam about Forlorn. By day, Tristan is the vampire living in his castle, and each sunset he undergoes a painful death, becoming a ghost, returning to life every dawn. This domain of dread is extremely detailed in the box set Castles Forlorn for 2nd edition. The day-night cycle is important because it changes the Dark Lord's tactics based on which form he is in. The adventure tied to this domain is fairly open. You merely explore and uncover the truth of what happened to Tristan. Note there is an undead gargantuan ancient water serpent named Aggie that resides in the lake, and once players arrive to the castle, there is some temporal shifting that occurs. More or less, there are 3 castles, or 3 time periods of the castle, defined as A, B, and C. The same Dark Lord Tristan, but sometimes he's posing as the cousin getting his inheritance, or later on, he's the great-grandson of the last Abt Blanc. This really great backstory that we went over in this video, that's what the players get to explore. They get to roam around the castle and piece together what happened and what Tristan truly is. It's a fun adventure with the power of time travel in the Dungeon Master's court. The more I research Ravenloft, each domain is a rabbit hole of information. And Forlorn could be played as a mystery with the PCs seeing images of the past to understand the domain's dread lord and how to defeat him. Or it could be just a fun sandbox to fight an undead sea serpent. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Special thanks to Describe for their finely crafted box text that was used at the beginning of this video. If you're interested, you can check out describe.com/Jordan with a PH for more finely crafted box text. I'll be back next week with more lore, more videos. I'll see you all in the next one.